Hello and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use at 5, Nursing Business and News with Baxter Professional Services and the Nurse Shark Academy. I want to thank you for joining us today. It is April the 12th, 2023. Very excited about this week and what's happening. So let's jump into our affirmations for the day. This is a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. Believe you can and you're halfway there. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. This is a quote from Ronald Reagan. We can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. We can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And our last affirmation for today is actually from today on the calendar, and it says, a negative mind will never give you a positive life. A negative mind will never give you a positive life. This is from our Inspirational Daily Calendar by Lauren Dratch. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get started with the What I Am Reading segment. Those of you who have tuned in of late know that I am finishing and reading the book called The Finished Life by Pedro Adao. And this chapter is on the power of purpose. And I want to kind of stay here because I think we need to talk about purpose a lot more in nursing. So he says, identifying your purpose allows you to tap into the emotional vigor that will be needed to persevere until the work is finished. I want to say that one again. Identifying your purpose allows you to tap into the emotional vigor that will be needed to persevere until the work is finished. I think about this in the context of nursing because we're in a time where there are more nurses that are leaving the profession more than ever. And I'm not saying or judging them for that decision. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that sometimes we've forgotten what our purpose is. And so we don't have that drive to continue until the work is done. And I'm not talking about working overtime and all of that. That's not what I'm talking about. It's that drive to show up every day because you're living out your purpose. He says, awareness of and commitment to your purpose will create a willingness to push through your fear in pursuit of purpose. Because the fear, pain, and potential regret of not achieving his or her purpose, the pain of missing out on the fullness of joy promised, is so much greater than the potential pain involved in taking the necessary steps to realizing full potential. He asked the question, what would you attempt if you knew you couldn't fail? It says, desire and enthusiasm for something creates a hunger and awareness of things, people, and situations that you believe can help bring about the outcome you desire. Passion makes you smarter as it creates a target for your brain to focus on, which makes it easier for your brain to filter out information that is not important and bring your attention only to what is important. And so when you think about this, it's quite interesting because he asked a question here, what do you do that brings you incredible joy? And that's the question I'm posing to you. And this is a question to ponder. And if you want to share, please go ahead and share in the comments. But what do you do that it brings incredible joy? And it's so interesting because I was talking to a couple of people today, and I happened to be on a podcast as well. And I was talking about the joy that I feel in being a nurse. The joy that there's just something about nursing that resonates with me to my core. And I know that I was called to be a nurse. And so for many of us, it's a calling. And so we need to get back to that joy that we had when we first put on that uniform, when we first got our pen, when we first took that oath. And remember that joy, that there's so much joy to be found in our profession, that it's not all doom and gloom, that I still believe that nursing is the greatest profession in the world. and I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So let's go on and get to our news segment. And as I'm getting ready for our news segment, I do want to say hello to those of you that are on the Nurse Shark Academy. We do have a big event that's coming up next week. If you want to attend, there's still time to get in. If you're ready to take massive action, you're ready to open up that business, and you want to just get started right away, the Jumpstart class webinar will be available. And go to our website and register for that event. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about that at the end, but I wanted to let you know that that is available as I get ready to pull up the articles for today that I've been able to curate. And there's so much news that's going on. Things are just coming out really fast. It's like, wow. So let's start with this article here. And I want to start with I want to start with this one. All right, because has a higher impact of what's happening in other things. And as you probably are aware of the Nightingale operation by the FBI, where they were selling fake nursing diplomas and fake credentials. Well, this is from the Miami Herald. And it says nursing school operators plead guilty to selling fake diplomas to thousands in Florida. 2 nursing school operators in the Fort Lauderdale area have fessed up to peddling fake diplomas to thousands of students who could then avoid completing a rigorous program before taking licensing exams, and what prosecutors say was a multi-million-dollar racket stretching from South Florida to New York. Charles Etienne, 60, president of Sacred Heart International Institute in Fort Lauderdale, and Unit Sanin, 60, owner of Siena College of Health in Lauderdale, respectively pleaded guilty on Tuesday and last month to a conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud in federal court. Both face up to 20 years in prison, but are expected to receive much less time for accepting responsibility early on, according to their lawyers. As part of their sentencing, Sanin must turn over $1.3 million and Etienne about $150,000 to the U.S. government. According to one case, Sanin collaborated with business associates in Broward County to sell about 2016 false and fraudulent diplomas and educational transcripts to students that falsely represented that they had completed the necessary courses and or clinical training to obtain nursing degrees from Siena. According to another case, Etienne collaborated with those associates in Broward to sell about 588 false and fraudulent diplomas and educational transcripts under the same circumstances at Sacred Heart. In January, prosecutors with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami rattled the healthcare industry when they unveiled these 2 cases, in addition to 3 other indictments charging 23 other people who had ownership interests, worked as employees, or played the roles of recruiters for the 2 nursing schools, as well as a 3rd program, Palm Beach School of Nursing. So again, these 2 players did, in fact, plead guilty. We'll probably see more that will come forward and plead as well as the days go on. But because they went ahead and pleaded guilty, they're likely going to receive a lesser sentence. But this has far-reaching more consequences than just in Florida up to New York. Because here's a case of a North Dakota nurse. It says North Dakota nurse identified in FBI investigation, fake credentials, and bought diploma from KXNet. So it's Keloland News. A North Dakota nurse has been identified in the FBI investigation known as Operation Nightingale as one of the thousands who falsified their nursing credentials. Dorothy Cummins, an LPN, who worked at PAM Health Rehabilitation Hospital in North Dakota, took part in a scheme that produced thousands of fake nursing diplomas and transcripts. Cummings is said to have fraudulently obtained documents that she used to receive her practical nurse license in North Dakota in November of 2020. On September 6, 2022, the North Dakota Board of Nursing was made aware of an individual in North Dakota who was identified by the Federal Bureau of Investigation who obtained falsified credentials, according to Stacy Finning, the executive director of the Board of Nursing. North Dakota Board of Nursing took swift action by issuing an order of emergency suspension to prevent the nurse from engaging in the practice of nursing. Federal authorities say the scheme leaders who sold diplomas for $15,000 apiece are tied to 3 Florida nursing schools that have now lost their accreditation. Pam Hospital, where Cummings worked, told KX News, quote, this individual had previously worked at Pam on a periodic basis from July 2021 through October 2021. At the time, she was a licensed LPN by the state of North Dakota and the state of Minnesota and was employed full-time by another healthcare system. When her North Dakota license was suspended in September of 2022, Cummings had not worked at PAM in nearly a year. Her license is now suspended in Minnesota as well. Cummings, among 7,600 others, used the fake diplomas to take the National Nursing Licensing exam and land jobs as registered nurses, or in this case as an LPN. So again, this is far reaching. This isn't just one incident in one region. This is far reaching and it's going across the country. We've already seen cases in Georgia and other places as a result of this. So let's go ahead and move on. So this was an interesting story that came out. This is from I believe it's from Fierce. But this is an article that says Fitch ratings, workforce pressures easing for hospitals, ambulatory care, and nursing homes. So there's a little bit of bright news on the horizon. It says recent months' payroll and staffing data have largely brought good news for provider employers thanks to consistent monthly job additions, fewer open roles, and most importantly, a slowdown in hourly earnings growth, according to the recent sector update from Fitch Ratings. Hospital and ambulatory healthcare services payrolls have risen for 14 and 26 consecutive months, respectively, as of last month, according to Richard Park, who's the Fitch Ratings director. Hospital and ambulatory healthcare services monthly job additions are also up an average of 15,150 and 24,300 per month, respectively, between March 2022 and February of 2023. These statistics point to the potential of alleviating labor market pressure. He goes on further to say that sustained staffing improvements at nursing homes should help improve the length of stay and discharge challenges at hospitals, which is true. Yeah, this was provided by Fierce Healthcare. I have a friend whose father is in need of nursing home placement, and they can't find a bed for him. And part of this is because there aren't enough staff to take care of him in her state. So this is a problem. And so anything that we can do to alleviate this crisis, I'm all for, as long as we take care of our staff. Because we don't want what's happening in Canada to happen here. This is a story from CBC in Manitoba. And it says staffing shortages in northern Manitoba nursing stations, a life or death matter, advocate says. A shortage of nurses across the country is hitting hard in remote and northern First Nations like Pimicamac Cree Nation in Manitoba, where nursing stations are typically the only place people can access health care close to home. Chief David Monias said the nursing station in Pimicamac was only open to see people on an emergency basis as recently as last week due to nurse availability, which has them concerned about the kind of care community members are getting. The front line is very key in terms of how they're receiving our people. We have to make sure that we have our people properly diagnosed. Indigenous Services Canada runs 21 of 22 nurses stations in Manitoba. They are places where the majority of care is provided by nurses and they're in short supply. According to a recent response from the federal department to an order paper question filled by Nikki Ashton, NDP MP for Manitoba's Churchill Kiiwetinoong ASCII riding, 223 nurses are needed each day in ISC staff nursing stations across the country. ISC said on average in recent months, those shifts have been filled by 71 public servant nurses. So you can see they've got a lot of vacancies. 79 agency nurses and 30 auxiliary health workers were called on to help fill the vacancies, while 43 nursing positions were left unfilled. Dr. Larry Lavallee, executive director of a Northern Health and Wellness Advocacy Agency called Kiiwetinoong Inuit Minoe Yemen. I am so sorry. I know I'm butchering all of this. Has said these situations are emergencies. He says if you have no nurse, there's nothing available. The communities, it's life or death in many cases, so we need somebody here. They go on to say that the nurses that we have, they're all doing a, quote, hell of a job in a poor situation to try and provide good care, when I think the system is just a little bit backwards in trying to find ways to support them effectively. So again, this is a problem that is not just in the United States, but it has rippled across the country. I remember a couple of months ago, we were talking about the strikes that were happening in other places in the world, including Canada and places like that, and the staffing shortages that are happening. So here's an article that was interesting to me. This came out. It was about a proposed federal law which set nurse-to-patient staffing levels. According to U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, advocated for legislation Tuesday. Of course, hospital groups have said minimums would hurt them, obviously. Nurses, according to Brown, nurses have never been appreciated enough. Amen. They've worked long hours in critical jobs. They keep patients safe. They provide the highest quality of care. Yet too often nurses are forced to do the impossible, caring for more patients than they have the time or the capacity to be able to manage. And then as a side note, we're then penalized by that, by getting more work, losing our jobs, burning out, and possibly making an error that could cost a life, that could possibly cost us not only have civil penalties, but criminal penalties as well. This is how things are going. So obviously, this is a nursing show. I'm on the side of the nurses. The Senate legislation, Senate 1113, tracks current California laws and calls for direct care registered nurse to have limits on their number of patients depending on the situation. Examples of maximums would include 1 patient in a trauma emergency unit, 2 patients in critical care units, 3 patients in emergency room and pediatrics units, and 5 patients in rehabilitation and skilled nursing units. Wow. Wait a minute. 5 patients in rehab and skilled nursing units as opposed to the 30 or 40 we have now? That would be awesome and great. Okay, so anyway, that was an aside. All right. According to Brown, she says, we know that safe staffing levels mean better outcomes for patients, but too often nurses are stretched too thin, caring for too many patients with not enough support. Workers are the first line of defense keeping Ohioans safe. We just need to make sure there are enough of those workers on the job. The Greater Dayton Area Hospital Association said they appreciate Brown's, quote, continued support for the high quality clinical care provided by our region's hospitals, but added that a national standard of nurse staffing would take away, quote, local decision making efforts. In other words, ability to cut your budget. According to them, it says imposing staffing mandates in hospitals would eliminate the necessary local decision making that allows hospitals to remain nimble and meet a community's clinical care needs while upholding established patient safety and quality standards. As hospitals continue to recover from COVID-19, mandating staffing levels would only further exacerbate current staffing challenges, thereby jeopardizing our hospitals' ability to meet the diverse needs of our 11 counties. According to Rhonda Risner, who's a nurse at the Dayton VA, she says, I've seen the danger the nursing profession is in. She's been a nurse for 34 years and an ER nurse for 29 of those years. She worked at the Dayton VA for 16 years. Hospitals are hemorrhaging nurses. Why? Because nurses are being put between a rock and a hard place. Every day, they are forced to work in conditions that are unsafe for their patients and themselves. This was a problem before the pandemic, but the pandemic made it a national crisis. And this is what we've been saying all along on the show. Nurses that are in the trenches, we all know. We all know. And so it's going to be interesting to see if we get a national mandate. That I think that would help. There's another initiative out there that I think that may also help. With this, and that is, let me see if here it is. This one. I just found this article. It was on my LinkedIn, and this is from Global Newswire, and I wanted to share this with you. Coming out of Boston, the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement has recently launched in response to the nationwide concerns of nurse staffing shortages and will be working to change the way healthcare systems are reimbursed for the valuable care nurses provide. The commission is comprised of national nurse leaders, healthcare executives, policy experts, and academics. Together, they aim to vet, validate, and create sustainable solutions that can be adopted by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services and insurance providers. The commission believes that this will improve the current model of payment for nursing services within hospital and healthcare systems. Dr. John Welton, Professor Emeritus, University of Colorado, states the current financial model for nursing dates back to the 1930s, one that rolled nursing services into room rates for insurance reimbursement and placed nursing services as a cost to healthcare systems. So let me break that down for you, for those of you who are not in the healthcare profession or not a nurse, and understand that when you enter the hospital, those nursing services that you get, those dressing changes, the pills, the passing of the pills, right? That act that the nurse does. So all the things that the nurse do, the assessment that she does on you, is all rolled into your room charge. What they separate out is, okay, the pill. So each pill has a cost attached to it, but not the nurse who gives the pill. Each treatment, the medicine that they use, the dressings that they use, even the comb that you get to comb your hair, all those are kind of priced out, could be charged separately in some cases. But the actual person who's doing the care, the nurses, are not billed for their services and being there, the expertise, the things that they bring to the table. And this is a problem. Historical perspective helps to explain why nurses were rolled into room rates and why their services were denied a reimbursement model. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, families would hire private nurses to go into the hospitals and patient outcomes improved. Hospitals saw the value in this and started to train and employ nurses. At that time, nursing services was listed as billable. But by the 1930s, as hospitals established a payment model, they looked to hotels and realized maids were rolling into room rates, so they did the same thing with nurses. See there? Forever hiding the value of nursing services. This differs from how any other healthcare professionals are treated. For example, occupational therapy, physical therapy, respiratory therapy, podiatry all have billable services, while nursing has remained without. And so that's very key and critical. So when my husband was in the hospital several years ago, respiratory therapy had put a charge on there for his CPAP. But he brought in his own CPAP, which I managed because I'm the one who put the water in it. Respiratory therapy was not involved, but because he had a CPAP, they were putting in a bill. Obviously, we're able to dispute that and got it taken off. But my point is, they were able to bill for that, but nurses cannot put in billing for the services that they provide because it's all rolled into the room rate. Rebecca Love, who's the co-chair of the commission, states, the way nursing reimbursement model is constructed contrasts starkly to any other reimbursement model for healthcare professionals. All other healthcare professionals bill for their services. This failed economic model creates an unsustainable and misaligned model where nurses and healthcare systems are in constant conflict that can be solved by allowing nurses to be a billable service. So when you're put into the room charge, you're basically looked at as a cost center. You cost the hospital something. So when they have to reduce cost, they're going to reduce nurse staffing. Because we're a cost, we're not billable. They can't bill for what nurses do. Now, here's the thing. You've got nurses that go into school and spend all this money to become competent professionals, and yet what they do is not billable, but you can do that for other healthcare professionals. And we're the biggest healthcare professionals in healthcare. We're the biggest specialty, nursing. That makes no sense. Sharon Pierce says, for decades, nurses have worked to bring this issue forward and create a more sustainable reimbursement model. Today, we are formalizing this initiative with the commission. The reimbursement models for all other healthcare professionals are successful. We never hear that we can't support more doctors or physical therapists, but we constantly hear there is no money for nurses. It is time we fix this. Healthcare cannot function without nurses. And so I'm very excited about that. They're working on some initiatives. They're working along other nursing organizations and partnering with healthcare groups nationwide to propose a solution to Congress that considers the needs of more than 5 million nurses in America today. So if you're interested in this, let me know in the comments, and I will post the information for the commission. I know that they're looking for getting key stakeholders in their comments. And there is, if you get on their website, you can sign up to get more information and keep abreast of what's happening with this. But I think this is wonderful, and it's about time. All right. So let's go a little bit on to some more about nursing news. I want to talk about this because I talked about this on a podcast just recently. And this is where I really want us to understand, don't do these things. I'm not picking on nursing at all, but this is just something that came up that I want other nurse practitioners, other in the healthcare field, to take a pause. Don't do this. Okay. So this is coming out of Rhode Island, and it says, nurse practitioner sentenced in $12 million healthcare fraud scheme. A registered nurse and nurse practitioner who defrauded commercial health insurers and Medicare of nearly $12 million by devising and executing fraudulent billing schemes in 3 states seeking payment for patient services that were never performed has been sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Alexander A. Istomin, 57, pleaded guilty in October of 2022 to an 11-count information charging him with healthcare fraud, mail fraud, aggravated identity theft, and causing the introduction of misbranded drugs into interstate commerce. He admitted that he routinely submitted fraudulent claims for an in-person patient services that he did not perform, including supposed patient visits at a ghost office in Rhode Island and at offices in Florida and New York. He used 7 different tax identification numbers while defrauding 8 insurers out of a total of 11 million more and change. Okay. The ghost office that he had in East Greenwich, Rhode Island, that he claimed was part of his medical practice, was actually a location solely for the purpose of receiving mail, including fraudulently obtaining insurance payments. So he actually never saw patients out of this office. I bring this up because, and you can read more into the story, but I bring this up because as we get ready for our events coming up, we have the Jumpstart Biz program, so you don't get involved in doing things like that. But also coming up in May for Nurses Week, we're going to have a Nurses for the Kingdom challenge. And the reason I'm having this challenge is because of stories like this. I want us to be entrepreneurs. I want us to have our own businesses. I want us to go out and do it, but I want us to do it in the right way so that we don't become a cautionary tale. And so we're going to talk about how to have authenticity and integrity in your business, and that's going to set you apart in the marketplace. You're going to be different and cut through all the noise that everybody else hears, and we're going to bring some of that joy and positivity back into nursing. So I bring this story up because too many times we're trying to take shortcuts, and I'm not talking about we, but I mean in life, people or in general, we're looking for shortcuts. And what happens is we get caught up, and then these things happen, and then you lose everything. So let's go about getting it the right way. That's the key. And so that's what I want to talk about in our challenge that's coming up. So I'll talk about that more in a moment. But let's move on to this story. I thought this was interesting and something to ponder as well. It says Aspen Hospital to start nurse residency program. I kind of in agreement with this. It says, in the face of healthcare workforce challenges, Aspen Valley Hospital announced a new graduate nurse residency program in what officials called an effort to, quote, grow our own that will start this summer with 4 recent graduates from nursing schools. It is modeled after other nurse residency programs throughout the country, and it is designed to introduce new nurse residents to the profession and the hospital, integrating additional education and support from experienced nurses and other mentors. The program is structured transition to practice program with an evidence-based curriculum through which a newly licensed nurse can continue to gain the knowledge, skills, and professional behaviors to deliver safe, high-quality patient care, according to the hospital. The year-long program includes a clinical preceptorship, as well as classroom seminars, skills lab, and simulation activities taught by diverse, qualified clinical faculty. The goal is to support new nurses with another year of intensive learning and professional support that improves patient outcomes, increases the nurses' job satisfaction, and eases their transition to practice, according to April Roark Gay, RN DMP, who is charged with developing and leading the residency program. The application period runs from April 1st to May 30th. Applicants who are accepted will need to commit to 2 years at the hospital, the first year in the residency program and the second year on staff. Once accepted into the program, the nurse residents will initially be evaluated in skills lab to gain an understanding of their level of competence. They will spend a considerable time in the classroom over their first 6 weeks learning about Aspen Valley's hospital's core values, policies, and procedures. After the initial training, the nurses will spend much of their time in one of the hospital's departments with their preceptor, learning to practice professional nursing skills and patient care. They will continue their class and lab work throughout the year under the direction of Roark Gray. So I think that's great. And I think that's wonderful. And I think we do need more of that because as particularly now that some of these nursing students are coming out from the pandemic, they aren't sometimes feeling ready to be thrown onto the floor, and this is where it increases burnout, and then they don't want to stay in the profession. So if we can ease them into that and provide them the support so they can do it, so it won't happen to them what happened to me, that you're on orientation for maybe 3 to 4 weeks, and then the day you come off orientation, now you're suddenly charge nurse. And yes, that did happen to me, true story. I was in orientation on second shift and charge nurse on third shift with no unit secretary. But I digress. It was a learning experience for me. It helped me to gain confidence in myself, but I don't want that experience for other nurses. That's not a good way to get nurses into the field. And that and some other things also led me to not work in that hospital anymore. Okay. All right. So let's get on to some great stuff. So let's start with this one. This is one of our nurses making a difference. I just love this story. Heart of Healthcare honoree nurse Courtney Moore Carver helped save her uncle at age 11. I thought this was great, so I wanted to share this. Um, she's got a beautiful picture as well. It says Courtney Moore Carver was 11 years old when she had a life-changing experience that inspired her to become a nurse. Her uncle David Moore showed up to her home bleeding profusely from his head after a nearby car wreck. Moore Carver reacted quickly and put pressure on his wound. He was later treated at East Alabama Medical Center. She says his head went through a windshield and I was able to handle it without passing out or anything. I was able to apply pressure and knew everything to do. Moore Carver was as calm as doctors treated her uncle. She knew then that she had what it took to be in the medical field. Moore Carver, who is an EAMC nurse more than 30 years later, has been named as honoree in the Opelika Auburn News Heart of Healthcare Initiative. She was excited to learn she is one of 10 nurses we're highlighting as National Nurses Appreciation Week approaches. Moore Carver, 42, grew up in a family with several members who served in the medical field, including her mother, sisters, aunt, and others. She says she wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps. Moore Carver followed her passion and started working as a certified nursing assistant tech at EAMC in 2000 in the skilled nursing facility. They gave her a scholarship and she went to nursing school at Southern Vocational Junior College in Tuskegee. She graduated in 2005, becoming a licensed practical nurse. In 2015, she earned her associates from Southern Union, becoming a registered nurse. Then in 2020, she completed her bachelor's of nursing from Jacksonville State University. Shortly after COVID-19 began, she stepped down from her position as a manager and went back to working the floor. She says, you definitely had to have your team. It was a time that we definitely worked together. We worked as a family. We were all very close knit, a lot of dedication, but it was definitely a lot of sad occasions. She's currently working on her master's from Aspen University while working as an RN at EAMC. She said her favorite part of the job is talking to her patients. I want to say congratulations to her. Feel free to read the article. If you want the link to the article, I could be happy to share that later. But yeah, so congratulations. She is one of our nurses making a difference. And we have another nurse making a difference. I found this story kind of heartwarming in contrast to the story that we had a couple weeks ago. So this is from nurse.org, and it says NICU nurse adopts teen mom with triplets who were her patients. Nurses make a difference in their patients' lives. Registered nurse Katrina Mullen, 45, on the other hand, was a literal guardian angel to a teen mom and her triplets. Sierra Small was 14 when she delivered triplets at only 26 weeks gestation in 2020. The triplets, Serenity, Samaria, and Soraya, spent more than 5 months in the neonatal intensive care unit at Community Hospital North in Indianapolis. Mullen cared for Small's triplets on and off during their time. A single mom with 3 kids at home, she tried to form a connection with Small for months, often wondering why the young mom would come into the hospital by herself and would rarely eat during the long hours. She said she'd be there alone for days at a time, sitting at her baby's bedside. Mullen would help Small care for her kids, showing her how to change a diaper, change their outfits, and feed them. Small would help Mullen understand the world of TikTok and social media. Despite the countless hours spent together, it wasn't until Mullen told the teen mom more about her own past that the barriers came down. Something shifted after I told her that I was a teen mom. That's when we really developed trust. But Mullen never judged the teen mom despite all the preconceived notions. Once the triplets were ready for discharge, Mullen gave Small her cell and told her to call her anytime she had questions about the triplets or needed someone to talk to. They began texting and FaceTiming regularly. So fast forward, it says they were talking. Mullen felt that something was going wrong, so she drove to Kokomo to visit Small on her day off. She noticed that Small was sleeping on the couch and the triplets were sleeping in the playpen. Small's son, Samurai, was covered in worsening eczema and looked frail and malnourished. Samurai was admitted to the local hospital and diagnosed with failure to thrive. Small explained that the pediatrician had switched Samurai's formula, and despite the changes, he was still throwing up and losing weight. The hospital was required to call DCS amid the home situation. The caseworker says Shariah and her babies were removed from their home, and then she goes, Shariah, she'd like to come live with you. Would you be willing? I knew it would be impossible to find a foster home that would take all four of them. No one was going to take a teen mom and her preemie triplets. I just kept thinking, I have to do this. I knew Shariah was intelligent and resilient, and she just needed a safe place to put her roots. I knew it would be hard, but we figured it out. Without hesitation, Mullen agreed to take Small and the triplets home with her. But first, she needed to become a foster parent legally. Despite already having trained as a nurse, she needed to take the required classes to become certified. The community stepped in and donating baby items and clothes for the young family. So she eventually entered foster care with her, and then they adopted her on February 6th, making her the grandmother of Small's three children. So that's wonderful. And again, that's our nurse making a difference, and that's right here in Indiana. So I wanted to share that. And then lastly, our last nurse making a difference is Ernie Grant. If you don't know who he is the past president of the American Nurses Association, and he just received an honor from the American Association of Critical Care Nurses. So congratulations to Ernest Grant. The American Association of Critical Care Nurses will present Ernest J. Grant, PhD, RN Fan, with its AACN Pioneering Spirit Award. The AACN Pioneering Spirit Award was one of AACN's Visionary Leadership Awards, recognizing significant contributions that influence progressive and critical care nursing and relate to the association's mission, vision, and values. The presentation will occur in 2023 at the National Teaching Institute and Critical Care Exposition in Philadelphia on May 22nd through the 24th. Grant served 2 terms as the president of the American Nurses Association, and in 2019, he became the first man to be elected ANA president, to leading the organization and its members through the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges of a healthcare system in crisis. He receives the AACN Award in recognition of his leadership and service to the nursing profession. So congratulations. You can read further on the story, but I just want to say congratulations to Ernest Grant on that, as well as he is our nurse making a difference. Okay, so that ends our news segment for today. So let's go on and talk about some of the events that are coming up. So next Wednesday, our Nurse Shark Academy Jumpstart Biz program will be on from 3 to 5. If you're interested in starting your nurse-owned business, you have questions, you just kind of want to know where to start, but you're ready to take that massive action, this is a class for you. You can register on our Nurse Shark Academy page. It will take you to our website to make sure that you register. You can also get it off of Eventbrite to register for this event, but you must be registered for this event. This will not be live broadcast. This is a closed event, so you must be registered to get the Zoom information and get the links. But coming up, and I want you to put this on your calendar, we'll start the promotional stuff next week. We'll be having our Nurses for the Kingdom Challenge during Nurses Week. So that will be May 10th, 11th, and 12th. We'll be doing our Nurses for the Kingdom Challenge, 3 days. We're going to have that in the evening, so you have plenty of time to get off work for those who work day shift. Maybe you can do it on your lunch break for those who work evenings and nights. But we're going to have this for 3 days, and we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, being a nurse, and working and doing all the things in a career the kingdom way and doing things properly. So we'll talk about that coming up. I'm very excited. We're going to talk about God's principles for your nurse-owned business. So join us for that event. That is a free event. So put it on your calendar, mark your time, so you'll want to be there. And then, of course, as always, we'll have VIP access for those of you who want to go VIP and be behind the scenes in the room and get the extra stuff that we have. We'll have that as well for you. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and share our videos. We did have our new podcast episode that just went out on Monday. So please take a moment to go over to the Nurse Shark Academy, our YouTube page, or find us on Podbean, or you can go to our Nurse Shark Academy.biz, and you can get it on our website. You can have access to our podcast, and we have great guests coming to you twice a month. You can also find our newsletter on the Nurse Shark Academy.biz as well. So please join us for our newsletter. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You can find us on our social media, Alignable as well. So thank you. I have an Alignable event starting in about 12 minutes. So I'm going to have to say goodbye for now. Thanks for tuning in.